Welcome back to Real Living, where we talk about real living. Were you adopted? And maybe you have some questions about that. Maybe you just wanted answers or want answers. That's what I wanted. I was brought up in a wonderful Christian home. So I didn't have any deep desires to know about where I came from because I felt like I was placed in the home and the family that God wanted me placed with. Turns out he was absolutely right. But I went to the adoption agency that handled my adoption only for medical records. That's something that I just feel is such a disservice to adoptees, that we don't have our medical history. How fair is that? Come on. So I wanted to know my medical history in my mid-20s. So I talked to my parents, found out what adoption agency they went through, and I just contacted them and said, hey, I don't want any information about my parents. I just want my medical records released to me. So can you make that happen? And they said they would look up some things and get back with me. Well, 2 weeks later, they contacted me and said, well, we have some news for you. When you were 7 years old, your birth mother contacted our agency and wanted to get you back. So she has relinquished her privacy rights. And it seems like that's what you're doing now too. So if you would like, we can open up the records to you and tell you everything, anything and everything you want to know. So of course that piqued my interest, and I thought, well, gosh. At first I was thinking, so I had to think about it. And I said, okay, let's go ahead and do that. And we had an appointment for the next week. And that gave me time to think even more about it. But I said, okay, yeah, tell me what you know. So I went in and had on my lunch hour, so it wasn't a very long, maybe 30 minutes, where they opened up the file and they told me everything that they knew. And it was really interesting. And boy, I took a notepad and a pen. And I was writing everything down. And so with that information, I was given a name, her birth date, and where she was at the time when she tried to get me back. So let me tell you then what I did back in 1990, years ago, looking for. So let me tell you what I did when I went looking for her. This poor copy of a book is, I can show it right. It's just, my goodness, fan it out here. It's just been weathered. I have given this out to other people that have used it to search for their birth parents. I actually helped another lady. I don't live in Tulsa, Oklahoma anymore, but I used to work downtown for a big accounting firm. And I would go on my lunch breaks down to the library and do research, for myself, but then also for this other person that contacted me and asked for help, because I put my name on a registry somewhere. It's been so many years ago, I don't quite remember. But anyway, I helped her, and we located her family. And she was connected to some people in the oil industry with some a lot of money there. But anyway, that's another story. So this is called the book that I made copies of because you were not allowed to check this out from the library at the time. So it's called How to Locate Anyone Anywhere. Now, this is some information I received somewhere, somehow, and it has this lady's name in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I believe she was an older lady at the time. And the note I have says, needs birth mother's name and birth date, and for $105 she can find her. That was back in 1990. So I don't know, that's still a thing or not. I can go ahead and give you her information. It's Leona Beamer, Albuquerque, New Mexico, area code 505-268-1310. But this book, this is how I found my birth mother. How to locate anyone anywhere. So again, they allowed me to take a copy, copies of every page. And let me tell you what I did. What you do. You write a postcard, or I wrote several postcards and had the return address to me, stamped it, and then you just have to write in the body of the postcard your little message. This way, what you're doing is sending this to the Social Security Department, the IRS, and those are the two main ones I remember. And it was my IRS letter, my postcard to the IRS that actually got through, and that's how I found her and how she contacted me. And I just wrote in the body of the postcard something like, this may come as a shock to you, but this postcard is from your daughter that you adopted. And I gave my birth date and gave my name and the location where I was adopted. And I said that this is, I'm looking for, and I gave her name and her birth date. And if this is you, I'd like to talk with you if you agree, and gave my phone number. So I mailed it out. And from the day I mailed out, I think 4 or 5 of these letters to various agencies, 26 days later, she contacted me. And that was quite amazing. And I also, the other thing, from the agency giving me a name of the dad, I went to the when I was at the library getting this book, I looked up a yearbook. And let me tell you, that was the most amazing thing. Looking up that person's name and seeing yourself. I've never looked like anybody. I go to my friends' houses and they look like their parents. And even though, my dad has the blonde hair and blue eyes, I still didn't have the features and everything. But I loved my dad. He's a wonderful man. So it was so cool. I remember when I found that, I just stared at that yearbook for I couldn't tell you how long. And of course, I made like 2 or 3 copies of that black and white yearbook page. And I remember going home that night and I couldn't go to sleep. I went to bed because I had to work the next day. And I remember just laying in bed with the flashlight, looking, having this page in front of me and just looking at all night long, because that was my face partially. And then when I met my birth mother, I can see where the other part is from. But it was just so cool to look like somebody. Anyway, sidebar. So she contacted me. I ended up going and meeting her in a state away. And, that's a whole nother different story. She has since passed. But I also met her father. My grandfather lived in Manford, Oklahoma. So let me tell you that story. This is just kind of cool, just how God orchestrates things and how you find things out. I don't like to call this other person my adopted grandpa, because he was my grandpa. He was my mom's dad. And he owned a Texaco gas station, little Texaco gas station in Manford, Oklahoma. And we went to see him at least every other weekend, a month. And never did I know that cute little yellow house on the hill with the land that joined my adoptive grandpa's land was my birth grandfather. They were neighbors. They knew each other, but by this point, my adoptive grandpa had passed away. But I contacted Frank, my birth grandpa, and he and his wife came out to my house at the time in Oklahoma, and we just sat and talked about his daughter and then the things that had happened, things he remembered. But it was just so sweet to get to meet, your relative. And then he was that close. He's 45, maybe an hour away from my house. So that was really neat. But researching my dad's side of things, that was rather sad, very sad. When he was in his 30s, let me just say this. He wanted to marry my mother. My mother said no, but he was all about getting married. And she got pregnant when she was 15 and gave me up for adoption. And she wouldn't marry him. So he, went on with his life and married somebody. And when he was in his 30s, he had a tree surveying company, bought a gyrocopter, and on his 3rd flight up, learning how to fly, he crashed and he died, unfortunately. But I did get to meet his mother, my grandmother, and his sister, and he had 2 kids, and we have a little bit of similarity looks. Got to meet them, and they were still in Tulsa. So that was really cool. Really, really cool. So, is that the 2 things I would say? And then I found out where my dad was buried, and it was just a mile behind my house in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma at the time. So just what a small world that all these years he had been just right behind the house that I bought, got married and bought that house, but still wasn't far from me. And then my 2 grandpas knew each other and had adjoining property. And that's just some kind of cool. So I just wanted to recommend to you I know we have Google now. We have all kinds of different ways to search things on the internet. But let me tell you, this was tried and true. So if you're needing any help to locate, if you have that information, if you don't know the information, go back to the adoption agency and see what information they can release to you. You never know, you might get lucky like I was. Funny thing, I still didn't get a lot of the health record information that I wanted. I just learned a very little bit, but I did learn a little bit more about when I met my grandpa about some health conditions he had. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. It's a sweet story. And my parents knew that I was doing this and they were fine with it, and kept a little bit of communication with my birth mother, but we led very different lives and they just did not mesh well. So we did not stay in contact. But it was still cool to get to meet her and to know the name that she named me. That's kind of a little weird too. I was born in June and she named me April. And I ended up having 2 half brothers. And then I had a half sister who was born in October, but she named her May. I don't know, go figure. But that's not my name. That's not what I go by. Anyway, just wanted to share this encouraging story with you. And to know that was just a blessing. Maybe you are supposed to find out who your birth parents were, and maybe you aren't. I don't know. I just know that I wasn't looking for that information, and it was just unfolded to me for some reason. And I did witness to my mother. She, at a later point when we were still talking, had talked about having Bible studies in her home. I'm not sure if that's a true story or not, but that's what she wanted to tell me. So anyway, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. I'm happy to help anybody with anything. This has been a few years, but this is still near and dear to my heart. So adoptees, let's unite. Thanks.